Hi, this is Scott Wilkinson, host of Home Theater Geeks. In episode 314, I chat with Scott Wilker and Mark Waldrep about their new modular sonic block speakers. So stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Home Theater Geeks is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson, recorded July 28th, 2016. Episode 314, Modular Speakers. This episode of Home Theater Geeks is brought to you by Epson's new EcoTank printers. With Epson's line of SuperTank all-in-one printers, you can print thousands of documents without running out of ink. EcoTank is loaded and ready to print when you are. Visit epson.com/ecotank to find out more. Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the Home Theater Geek and editor of avsforum.com. This week's guest geeks are Scott Wilker, founder and CEO of a company called Sonic Blocks. Hey, Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for having me.
You bet. And one of our favorite returning guests, Mark Waldrep, the founder and CEO of AIX Records and iTracks.com, and now the Chief Audio Officer of Sonic Blocks. Mark, welcome back.
How are you doing, Scott? Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too, as always. Those of you who are watching live at live.twit.tv can join the chat room there, or you can go to irc.twit.tv and join the chat room. And you can post questions for my guests as we go, and I'll pass along as many as I can. It always helps if you put my screen name, which is my full name, Scott Wilkinson, no dots or dashes or spaces or anything like that, because then it shows up in a different color on my screen, and my eye gets drawn more easily to it. So, Scott Wilker, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your background, because that's going to lead us into what we're going to talk about today.
Certainly. Well, I'm a 30-year business development and inventor, having worked on all kinds of product concepts and product development, from fire and safety systems to computer hardware and software components, both as an intrapreneur and an entrepreneur. So I've worked with multinational companies, trying to develop, internal concepts, bringing new product and concepts to market, enhancements to product lines that are there, that sort of thing. So I've spent the last couple of years working on wearable technologies. And back in 2013, I exited the last company that I started up that was in the wearable technologies.
Now, you've also worked in the media markets as well, right?
I have indeed. In a variety of different scenarios, I have both had, from recording studios in malls, like karaoke studio type things, as well as having worked with just about every theatrical, company, licensing and producing, content material from that side, as well as audio materials for different technologies, and some that Mark and I have worked on in the past together. Mm-hmm.
I have to say, I love this idea of recording studio and karaoke studio in the mall for people, for mall rats, basically, teenagers, I guess, to go in and do their own thing, right? I mean, that's kind of cool.
Well, all of us think that we're great, we're great artists, right? We're all going to hit it big, and
right.
Not until you hear what you sound like that you're like, oh, that is just awful. Really awful. But it is so much fun. We had a great time doing it. And during those days, we had a music production company where we used to produce all the background tracks. And we had this great time. And then we brought the kids into the studios, and they would have a ball recording along with all of our background tracks. Then, it was still early from a technology standpoint, so we used to record them all onto cassettes. And then we allowed them to go into the green screen studio, and we would green screen them into some great backgrounds in movies, and they can make their own music videos as well.
Well, that's very cool. But now, today, we're here to talk about your latest venture, which is a company called Sonic Blocks. So tell us, what is Sonic Blocks, and what do you intend to accomplish with this company?
Certainly. Well, back, after I exited my last company, I was traveling all over the world, and finally I got back into New York or New Jersey at the time. And my son and I, Jordan, who's my co-founder and co-inventor, we were sitting in the office that we shared in the house. And the concept really started with us sitting in the office trying to figure out what piece of music we're going to listen to, and which was a challenge. And then once we finally found
well,
that piece
father
of
and son might have some different tastes there.
Very much so. But oddly enough, he did come around and he finally found a piece of music in my library that he liked. And I thought, okay, all is good in the world. We'll be able to coexist in this space. Then all of a sudden he turned the music up and he started cranking up the bass. And of course my head was about to explode. So, and I'd go over, I'd crank that down and I would equalize it and do whatever. And, he would get up and start, changing and modifying different things. And it was kind of bizarre because here it is, the two of us who finally found a piece of music that we liked together. All of a sudden, we wanted to hear it in a completely different way. So, all of a sudden, this idea of customization and personalization really started to come to fruition for us. And while we're sitting there trying to do this, we're surrounded by all of these obsolete, Bluetooth speakers that we had bought and used and discarded over time as our taste changed. And Jordan, all of a sudden, he turned to me and said, "Dad, there's really an opportunity for us to do something together here," because, of course, he had grown up with me, coming up with all these crazy ideas. And he was always the first one to say, "Dad, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard." Well, all of a sudden he's turning to me. He's like, "You know what? There's really something here. There's a market, not just, for me, but for millennials who certainly want to have this greater control over their environment." And he said, "You know what? Why don't we see what we can do about fleshing out this concept and seeing if there's something else that's out there?" And that was really the genesis of this overall concept. And it's been a whirlwind since then. So
now it turns out that when you looked out in the world, there wasn't anything like what you're planning and designing and intending to sell. So what is it that we're talking about here?
Well, what we conceptualize is a completely modular system where, your traditional Bluetooth speaker, it's a set and forget, right? You have it, you can't customize it, you can't change or modify it once you bought it. So what we started with was this modular concept where we would separate all the essential parts and pieces. So we started with a brain, and that brain was intended to be really platform agnostic. So as technology changed or modified, we'd be able to upgrade it, enhance it, and be able to grow. And we said, okay, let's start with a basic technology. So we started with Play-Fi. And Play-Fi, which is a great platform, allows us to have everything from single block to adding multiple block configurations to having a whole house speaker system type of a system. And then we said, all right, let's build on top of that. And we designed this exoskeleton that you can also pop onto it. And every face, in this case, it's start with a square or a cube. And every face of that cube has a place where you can decide what type of drivers you want in this system. So you can pop in a tweeter, a mid-range, a full-range, a woofer component. And you can pop them off, swap them on, pop them off anytime you want and completely enhance the system. And that was the basic concept from an audio perspective. And then all of a sudden, you can start adding on all kinds of enhancements to this type of system. So where we're launching this as a very really unique type of audio system that is a swappable element, we designed it to have this long tail of accessories and other components and elements that we can identify and authenticate and pop onto the system so that users and consumers can have a very long life of technology available to them that doesn't go obsolete.
It's a fascinating concept. We have a few graphics here that I want to show people to see. Those of you who are watching, I hope you are, because this is going to show you exactly what's going on here. Let's take a look at, first of all, SB Modular Approach, which is a photo, basically, or a composite photo of all the different elements that go into making this speaker. And then if we go to SB Intro Video, we should see a little animation of there's the exoskeleton. And I guess it should be moving, but I don't see it moving. That's kind of interesting.
But it gives you a good representation of all the faces that you can populate with a different driver or different accessories.
Right, exactly. And this this video should actually be showing us an animated view of that happening, but for some. Oh, well, what do you know? Animated GIFs don't work on the TriCaster, I'm just told. Dang. Oh well. So I will forget the animated GIFs then. In that case, then let's take a look at the SB Exploded View 2, and we'll see an example of, or a depiction of how these parts all come together, and it really is quite modular. You can put various things together and do exactly what you want. Damn, I'm so sorry that the GIFs don't work. Let me see here. One of the interesting things is that these drivers, once you install them, can be articulated out. Let's take a look at SB Articulated 1 and 2. So here you see you've got this exoskeleton populated by drivers, and they kind of pop out. And you can make them, there's number 2, and you can sort of position them as you will. What was the point of that?
Well, for us, once we started looking at what was available in the marketplace, there were a lot of companies that were talking about this 360 sound, like it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they really didn't take into account what kind of soundscape or environment the speakers were being played in. So you have all these crazy surfaces that are all over the place, right? And you couldn't optimize the sound based upon the speaker system that you had. Because you couldn't move them, you couldn't change them. So we wanted to give users the ability to really fine-tune it and throw things off the walls, off the surfaces, and completely control them, no matter where they are or what the shape of and the architecture of their rooms. At the same time, we wanted to build in different types of capabilities into the system well beyond audio, and that required us to be able to have all kinds of detection and sensor capabilities, on a truly on a 360 basis. So you'll see things like microphones and sensor packages and even lighting elements that are indicator components that are both there for entertainment purposes, as well as functional components. So no matter where you are in the room, you can access the app and get all kinds of information that's available that comes off of the system itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me bring Mark Waldrep in here. Mark, how did you get involved with Scott Wilker and Sonic Blocks?
Kicking and screaming.
I'm sure that's not quite true.
Well, I've known Scott for a long time. I think we figured it's 10, 15 years by now through Bertelsmann and some of the stuff that he was doing when I was in the nascent days of DVDs and authoring. And as an audio guy and understanding, after we were combined in a company for a while as a game startup out of New York, and after that diminished and went away, I got back to doing my thing and the records and record production. But I'm an audiophile. It's something I care a lot about in terms of audio quality and so forth. And this seemed like a rather unique and interesting idea. And I've been pretty upfront, and I think I told you the other day that, look, in the world of $6,000 power cords and little trestles that pull your speaker lines off the floor, this is not one of those audiophile fantasy type products. But for me, it was interesting because it allows people in sort of that tinker toy Lego mentality to modify things easily. It's basically snap on and snap off these driver components, as well as then the software application that allows you to set up, calibrate, and communicate between these devices, your music sources, and between different rooms that have these things. So it was an attractive option to me. I was more than happy to contribute. from a sort of advisory board consultory perspective. It's been a couple of years worth of refinements and developments, frustration, steps forward and steps back. But we're really on the launch pad now in terms of being able to try and bring this product actually to the public through the Indiegogo campaign that'll be launched next week.
Which we'll point people to here shortly. But Creamy Corn Cob is already getting kind of geeky on us here. So, Mark, I will ask this of you. How is it hot swappable with drivers without adjusting the F to the third? I'm not sure I know what you mean by that, Creamy Corn Cob. Enclosure airspace. Certainly you know, Mark, that the enclosure and the acoustics of the enclosure behind the driver make a lot of difference in the overall sound. How is this dealt with in these speakers?
It's something that Scott and I have actually talked about on more than one occasion, and I have opted, although some of the prototypes and 3D printed versions that have emerged from the partners down in North Carolina actually have closed backs. But if you go to an audiophile show, quite often you'll find people in the sort of experimental or more esoteric side of speaker design with no backs on them at all, that you really get rid of that porting issue, and the resonance is inside of cabinetry if you have no cabinet at all. So
right.
Opening up the back sides of these speakers that articulate out is something that we haven't thoroughly nailed down yet, but it brings up the option. As for hot swappable, you simply say on the software application on the piece of hardware to say we're in swap mode, which means it's going to kill the power to any one of those contacts that are being swapped in real time. I mean, you swap it on, put a new driver on, then you put it back into play mode, and you're good to go.
Right. Well, that's great because, of course, when you hang on a second, Scott, when you disconnect a live audio cable, you can get a pretty bad pop. So I'm really glad to hear that you've built in a thing that says, okay, in swap mode, we're going to make sure there's no signal going to that speaker. Scott, right. Wilker, you wanted to say something there.
Yeah, just one point of clarity to make sure that your associate who asked the question understands the way that the subassembly works. The housing unit along with the driver is a single unit. So you're not just swapping the individual driver inside a one-size-fits-all housing. So the drivers will be optimized for each of the different housings, and that whole unit as a single entity pops on and off. So
right.
be it
and in fact,
an open back.
If we look at the SB Articulated 2, we can see what the kind of back box looks like. Here you can see the speaker drivers articulated out, and you've got these, they're not cones exactly, sort of ovoids maybe, I guess you'd say, which are actually enclosing the back of each driver. And Mark, you're saying that one option might be to have the articulating arm attached somewhere else and have the back of the driver be open.
It'd be more spokes. Yeah, there'd be
spokes. Okay, yeah.
The architecture is basically the same, except it wouldn't be a cone or a dome over the back of the speaker. It would allow sound to escape on the backside as well.
Let me see. I know there's a couple other questions in here. UJ is asking, how do they ensure stability and dampen undesirable vibrations and rattling, especially over time if parts are popped in and out of place?
Scott, do you want to talk about that one?
Sure.
Yeah, Scott, go ahead.
No, I mean, it's a great question and certainly a big concern for us. So we have spent a good chunk of the last couple of years refining and working on the mechanical engineering and all the connection components to ensure that we get these solid contacts. We've got lots of vibration testing, and making sure that when this product comes out, we're addressing all of those issues. So we constantly are refining it, looking at dampening everything, different sealing mechanisms that are there, testing and taking off all the connection elements, making sure that everything is solid. So when this thing comes out, we will have addressed all of those issues.
Hamit in the chat room is asking, is it multi-channel or only multi-driver? So in other words, can you put two of them together to make a stereo pair, or five of them together for a 5.1 system? Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, a single block can actually accommodate both mono or stereo. by the two sides that would then flare out to the side with a center. Or if you then configure multiple blocks, two people, for instance, come in to have a party in a dorm room, for instance, or you have more than one in a physical space, the configuration can be changed to a two discrete stereo, left and right. And as you go on and on, you can actually set the thing up to be a sound bar or a discrete 5.1 system.
Okay. I was going to look and see. I think we have some other images here I want to make sure everybody sees. We've seen that one. You mentioned a couple people in a room, and this is certainly one application is whole house audio, and there's a lot of companies doing that. Sonos, Denon, Yamaha. I mean, there's a bunch of them. And we have one image here called SB Story 7, the app option, that I just want to show people, which shows a situation of, multiple sonic blocks sitting in different parts of the house. You can also here see somebody, manipulating an app, and that's an important part of the whole thing. Is a mobile device app like iOS or Android or whatever, Scott, right?
That's correct. It allows you from an app standpoint to control any one block, or you can control an entire house. If you have one in every room in the house, each one can be controlled individually, and it gives you a lot of functionality and capability to be able to customize and personalize your sound with the DSP capabilities in each one of the drivers within that system. There's also, constant enhancements and upgrades to functionality, from a software perspective. So we're going to be constantly pushing new capabilities into the system, along with the new accessories that will be populated onto the, onto your blocks with the options that you're going to have moving forward.
Now, I want to take a look at the graphic called SB Grills Off. And Mark, I want you to talk to us about the different types of drivers that will be available for this. Here we can see it's not articulated. All the driver faces are back into the exoskeleton, but you can see that there are different types. On the top is a dome tweeter. More towards the front is what looks more or less like a woofer, and on the side, I don't know what that is. So, Mark, tell us a little bit about the different types of drivers one can get and install on this thing.
One of the chores that I had, boy, it's been over a year, was to identify, and then we had a whole bunch of speakers that were actually purchased and sent, and we hooked them all up to the Play-Fi, and we listened to them both in isolation and in combinations with each other to try and determine which ones would meet the needs both from a frequency response point of view, and I know the underlying JD and Scott wish was that, yes, the speakers in themselves will be the controller or the arbiter of that fidelity standard. And I've backed off of that a little bit with them, because what you said a moment ago, what Scott said a moment ago in terms of the app being able to individually control the DSP controls behind each one of these panels. So let's say you're a more hi-fi guy, or you really like the heavyweight bass components to be enhanced. Populate two of the surfaces or two of the sides with a woofer or a low-range driver, and pump up the bass through the application that would then deal with a DSP engine on each one of those speakers. So you have that kind of flexibility between optimizing a tweeter or a super tweeter, a low-end driver, a full-range driver, and each one, depending on the cost structure and the quality and the maker, you can enhance or build up to greater and greater fidelity in combination, obviously, with the core, which is running that Play-Fi engine.
Right, and that Scott, you call the brain. Is that what it's normally referred to as?
That's correct. Well, that's how we refer to it, because it's constantly updated. It's always getting smarter, and it's something that we really wanted to be able to control the system. Have the smart system that's there, being able to identify, authenticate, every part and piece, so that we can maintain, the highest possible quality of parts and pieces and anything that gets attached to the system. And it's also modular. So, whereas we're starting with the Play 5 brain, if we choose, because we want to also be, somewhat platform agnostic, if we choose to offer up, a different technology or a different capability, the existing brain itself will have updatable, components to it, but you'll also be able to hot swap out a different type of brain if there's, if the community at large, working with us determines that, there's another platform that we want to add on to the system and support.
We have one picture called SB Brain Ports, which really shows you the whole thing, but the brain is the thing on the bottom. It's basically the base of the cube. And there, if you'll zoom into the bottom there, you'll see the different ports that are available. Of course, it's also got wireless capabilities with Play-Fi, Bluetooth, and Wi-Fi, I believe, as well, right?
That's correct.
But you could plug things into the normal red and white RCA jacks. It's got an Ethernet port, USB port, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, SPDIF, Toslink.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
working with Mark, he certainly wanted to make sure that we were covering all of our bases, giving the users and consumers, all of the best, both digital and analog options, available. And this is where we landed to start with. And as we move forward with the modular system that we have, if there are other ports or concepts that we want to add to it, we can do that. With this type of architecture and infrastructure, it just becomes another layer or part element that we populate, onto this existing system today.
One more picture I want to show you. In addition to being able to modularly put different drivers on the different faces of the cube, you can stack these cubes together. And there's one called SB Multiple Modules that's kind of a sort of an extended to the not quite nth degree, but you could really build a serious speaker system out of this thing. Mark, any comments on this particular image right here, which is quite impressive?
Well, I think that's one of the key components. Is not only is each individual block and the surfaces on that cube addressable, but you can stack two of them. So if you really were to analyze this down, you can stack two units on top of it. You can put them adjacent to each other. You can flare out and have them connect. And what they do is they talk to each other. They get into proximity, and you configure them with the app, and all of a sudden now you have a wall of sound as opposed to just one block worth of sound.
Creamy Corncob is asking about subwoofers, and I guess I would wonder also if there was a sub output, because clearly the drivers that you're using here, as high quality as they are, they're not very big, so they're not going to be able to get really deep. So is there any option to add a subwoofer to the system?
Right now, we are planning, multiple options, from an enhancement standpoint. But we want to be, very careful and test, both the connection, the functionality, and capabilities. But it absolutely is our intention to add a subwoofer capability.
Scott, you and I talked. Scott Wilkinson, Mr. Geek. You and I chatted. Dr. Geek. Yesterday about that a little bit, because one of the campaigns, obviously, as we would go out there and survey the landscape of people that have done or are doing similar things like this, is one called the Core. And I found it kind of interesting because they've got this little 6x6 speaker that brags about all this holographic sound stuff, where they're throwing stuff out of phase to make it sound like it's not a mono spot speaker, but it's bigger than that. Well, one of their enhancements ultimately ended up to be a subwoofer. Their specifications claim that the regular little tabletop version went down to 44 hertz. Well, you buy I think it was $100 for the add-on premium purchase subwoofer, and that got you down to 35 hertz. So
$100 for a big 5 hertz.
It would be obviously the amplification there is going to be a bigger deal. You think, Bose or some of these Orb speakers, things like that give you that as well. But as I said at the beginning, we're not really intending to take the place of a good home theater system, or what the audiophiles would consider a really good system to hook their tubes and their 2-channel stuff up to. This is really meant to give you a stepping stone into the world of better, ever increasing fidelity systems, and both being portable and modular in its approach makes it somewhat unique. In the landscape that I've looked at, I haven't seen anything like this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to talk more about it, but before we do, I would like to take a moment to thank our sponsor for this episode, which is Epson. Epson's revolutionary cartridge-free EcoTank line of printers for home and office introduce a new age in printing. The EcoTank ET4550 wireless all-in-one printer doesn't use ink cartridges. Instead, it features an amazing, innovative, refillable ink tank, earning it the title of CES 2016 Innovation Awards honoree. No more out-of-ink frustration. It includes up to 2 years of ink, equal to 11,000 black pages or 8,500 color pages. You can save up to 80% on ink with low-cost replacement ink bottles. It's also powered by Precision Core printing technology, and it has auto two-sided printing and a 30-page auto document feeder and easy wireless printing from tablets and smartphones. All EcoTank printers deliver an unbeatable combination of convenience and value. With Epson's EcoTank line of printers, you'll have the freedom to print without running out of ink. In fact, Epson's EcoTank system was named the 2016 Small Biz Windows Printer of the Year. So visit epson.com/ecotank today to transform the way your home, office, or work group prints. For the best combination of ease and value, turn to the Epson EcoTank printers. That's epson.com/ecotank. And we thank Epson very much for their support of Home Theater Geeks. Epson, exceed your vision. So let's see. We've got another question or two from the chat room. Barfel is asking, and Mark, I think this is for you, will it handle 24-bit 96 kilohertz audio?
It will, yes.
And it better if you're involved, right?
Well, yeah, I've been pushing hard to make sure that we can do, and you can do that in a couple of different ways. Provided you've got source material, obviously it's been recorded at that standard. Right. You can go through Wi-Fi, or you can go hardwired into the analog inputs from a device that has a DAC that's 9624.
Play-Fi doesn't support that resolution?
Oh, it does. No, it does.
It does. Okay, so you could do Play-Fi.
You couldn't do it through Bluetooth, is what I'm saying.
I see.
Wi-Fi, you can.
Okay, I guess Play-Fi. Now, we should make a distinction here. Play-Fi is a wireless music technology that was developed by DTS, the people who give us DTS, the codec on Blu-rays and so on. You see them sometimes in theaters. Anyway, it's a sound company, and they introduced this a couple of years ago. What is the difference between that and Wi-Fi, or is there one?
Well, Wi-Fi is a protocol for communication between generic devices that actually allows you to get all the way up to high-resolution standards. Play-Fi is the brand name that DTS uses to describe their hardware and software environment, of which we've adopted for.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So it still rides on Wi-Fi, right?
Well, it has Wi-Fi as one of its capabilities.
I see.
It has Bluetooth. It also has analog inputs and outputs.
No, but I mean, Play-Fi sort of is a messaging specification that is transmitted over Wi-Fi. Have I got that right?
It's bigger than that.
It's bigger than that. Oh man.
Yeah. No. Scott, he's been dealing with the licensing, but as I understand, the Play-Fi is really the environment, including the hardware, not just the protocols for communication between them.
Scott, tell us a little bit about that. Why did you pick Play-Fi from DTS over some of these other possible wireless communication systems?
Well, when we first started looking, we spent a lot of time looking at the marketplace and seeing what was out there. And there were a number of competing technologies, because certainly we weren't going to get down into the weeds and start developing our own unique spec to be able to do this, because there are those that we can ride on their development environment. And Play-Fi had, not only a great environment, both from a Bluetooth and Wi-Fi scenario, supporting both the 2.4 gig and the 5 gig environment, but they had a great mobile application component. They were building up a very nice infrastructure, working, within a bunch of consumer electronic companies and wider adoption. And what we wanted to make sure of is that, consumers not only were able to enhance from the modularity on our own system, but if they had existing technology in their homes, right, that our system would be identified and recognized, on that network.
Become a part of it, yeah.
Exactly, right? So not only can we work on a standalone basis, but if you have other Play-Fi technology in your house, our parts and pieces will be identified and be instantly integrated into those things. And we saw their development path, and we liked where they were going, versus the other stuff that was out there. And we said this is a great starting point for us. So between their modular capabilities, both from a Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, mobile application capabilities, and their integration into the music libraries and online components, we decided to hitch our horse to that wagon, and that was our starting point.
Okay. Mark, here's a question coming from Creamy Corn Cob, or sort of a comment, I guess. If we look at, I guess, grills off, SB grills off, we will see, again, the drivers. And Creamy Corn Cob is saying that diamond-shaped one on the right looks more like a passive radiator. Is that correct?
No, in this case, it's actually not a passive radiator, although it does look like it. We've experimented with quite a number of different drivers, and this is one particular one that was there. So we are not including any passive drivers, on our initial launch, but there will be some options later on. But these guys, that you're looking at, have some pretty interesting capabilities, especially for the size and shape that allow us to to be able to really optimize the sound within the environments. And right now, these guys are going from like 80 hertz to 20,000 kilohertz.
When combined together, obviously.
Right.
Can you say who your driver supplier is, or is that under non-disclosure?
That's all under non-disclosure, but the good news here, though, which really becomes interesting, is the way that we've designed the system. We've invited, different driver manufacturers to come to the table. We want to give them an opportunity to really create products, specifically for our environment. So we're really trying to. We don't want to keep this a secret. All right. The idea is to open this up and have a multitude of different, really high, quality driver companies designing different options and making those available for consumers, so that we can continue to offer up, a much larger, offering for anybody who buys our products moving forward.
Emily the Strange has got a couple of good questions. So what is the Ethernet port used for? Audio and networking. Except that it's all wireless as well.
No, well, we have both. This can be a wired or wireless environment. It's both.
I guess to offer that flexibility is a good thing. And I would say that wired media transmission, I suspect it's probably more important for video than audio, but audio too, is always better, more reliable over a wired connection, even though everybody's talking about, it's wireless this and wireless that, so that you don't have cables running all over your house. I guess the point here is you get your choice, right?
That's exactly right.
Let's see. I know Emily had another question or two here. Oh yeah, how did I guess she's talking about these modules being able to be stacked and communicate with each other and having stereo pairs and so on. That communication is all done wirelessly, right?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. UJ is asking, have you investigated applying this idea to in-wall or in-ceiling speakers?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we have quite a number of really interesting, product concepts for exactly that in-wall ceiling that gives you the same modularity and capabilities within those types of enclosures and environments. But also some additional functionality that we're not ready to announce just yet, but also give you the ability to have some other unique capabilities within that space.
iPhone 75983, is that Hamid? No, I don't think so. And is asking about getting up to 192 kilohertz sampling rate, so 192.24. Will either of those systems? Will any of the communication systems support that high, Mark?
No, and it's not necessary.
No. And it's not necessary. You and I have talked about that on this show more than once.
More than once, yes. No, I mean, come on.
And we will again. And we will again, because there are people who still think that, well, if 96 is good, 192 must be better.
Well, so
but there is
1536 knocks one out of the park, right? Let's go 48 bits, 1536. Come on.
Right. At what point does the human perceptive ability end, and beyond which no more resolution won't get you anything?
Well, and that is obviously a part of the argument on the delivery end of things. But as you know, my big cause celeb has always been they're not making records that use that kind of bandwidth in the studios or in the rest of the building here. So why do we have to worry about being able to deliver something that's not there on the records to start with?
Mm-hmm. Exactly so. Scott, let me ask you this. AudioFan24 is asking, what CAD program do you use for the design work? I told you, man, this audience is full of geeks.
That's all right. No, we use SolidWorks.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't know that one, but maybe AudioFan24 does. Is that a common one?
It's a very common one. Great capabilities. We found it to be consistent amongst all of our mechanical designers, and everybody's accustomed to working within their formats. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's that.
That's the answer to that question. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I was going to talk about portable audio. One of you mentioned portable audio, and I thought this was another very interesting aspect of it. Scott, why don't you start us off with Mark and I had been talking about this yesterday, about how you could actually sort of disassemble it and take parts of it away and do different things.
Right.
How does that work?
Well, like Mark was starting to talk about before, if you think about, Legos and Tinker Toys and things of that nature on steroids, the idea here is that we started with one size, but, it's not a one-size-fit-all world. So in our architecture, we design one size here, but we also design smaller elements, smaller blocks that will also fit on the face. So if one face has today one driver that's in there, we also have connectors that allow, say, 4 different drivers or systems, microsystems, to be popped onto that face. And you can peel off any one of those or all 4 of them on one face and take them out and use them on a completely wireless basis, on a Bluetooth component, right? And then you can come back and combine them all back together again, and make sure that there are always elements like this that you can take advantage of, like your little Legos where you have 6 blocks, but you also have the single little pins that you can pop back into, 6 different single pins that you can pop into a single block. Same concept holds true here. So it's all about choice.
All about choice and modularity, and being able to start where your budget allows and then add on as budget permits, right?
Exactly. And that's really where, our concept of build better music comes into play, right? It's all about what you want, when you want, how you want it, and allow you to start with a starter kit, and then build up and build out as you wish and as your music preferences dictate.
Mm-hmm. Beatmaster in the chat room is asking, what are your plans for worldwide distribution?
Well, I've spent a lot of time over, the last 20, 30 years, on different types of distribution models. And I must say, I really don't care for retail. It's one of those where, you end up putting a lot of product, on boats and through distribution channels, and you can have you can be working with 1,000 stores, 500 of them are selling out, the other 500 are shipping you back product, and it's not an efficient system. So what we've decided to do is really go direct to consumer, and engage with the fans of our type of product line, not only wanting to sell directly to them, but we want and need input from the community. We want everybody to tell us what you like and what you don't, and help guide what our product development should be. So we're really going to stick with our online community for now, and perhaps sometime down the road, if it makes sense, we can talk about doing something different. But we'll have right now we're planning like different pop-up stores and different regional type of shows, allowing everybody to come in and get hands-on and play with it. But we're not planning a retail focused type of distribution, and we'll have partnerships around the world that will help support us there.
Speaking of partnerships, Scott, tell us a little bit about some of the partnerships you've established for this company and this product, which actually extend kind of beyond the audio realm a little bit.
Yeah, the beauty of this type of product is that there's such a long tail of elements that you can certainly envision that will attach onto the system. It's really designed to be way more than just an audio system. It's really designed to be a technology hub. So, we understand what we're good at and, what our limitations are. And, in coming to that realization, we decided the best thing for us to do is essentially to design a software development kit. And there are a lot of different companies that are out there today that already specialize in different types of parts and pieces that we can see attaching to our system, whether they're lights, cameras, projectors, home automation, all the IoT elements that are out there. So, both we've reached out to some, others have reached out to us once they heard what we're doing. And, we've got a really growing list of really great companies that are interested in designing products that will work specifically, on our architecture. So we're really excited about, getting all of those nailed down. And we're hoping at this point that we'll be able to roll out a bunch of these types of products come CES in January.
Okay. Speaking of CES, CEDIA is coming up. I mean, what is your roadmap at this point to introducing product that people can actually buy?
Well, as Mark alluded to before, we are in the throes of our pre-launch right now for Indiegogo. Right now, if all goes well, and knock wood that it will, we will be launching on Tuesday of next week. We have an Indiegogo campaign where we've set a goal for ourselves of $50,000 to raise. And, that will help us in our final, development roadmap for, what we need for our final tooling, our final design for manufacturing, a board spin, things of this nature. And we are looking to deliver, first products by June of next year, and then have a continuous roadmap of accessory products thereafter for, a pretty substantial, launch and capability come holiday next season.
Yeah, well, it seems like there's the potential for an almost limitless number of expansions and extensions and modules that one could add on to this, as you say, well beyond even audio, to things like safety and security, lights, the Internet of Things, as we now know things. There are so many things under that category, right? Is this going to be one of them?
Absolutely. And the good news is that we've already had a couple of patents issued that are going to give us some really unique capabilities. But the good news and the bad news of being modular and having so many options is making sure that we stay focused and making sure that the products that we put out are great and that we've got a really great platform to build on. And audio, especially with Mark's involvement, is making sure that we're, on that straight and narrow path, putting out a great product and being really proud of what we do before we confuse, the issue by bringing on too many accessories. So we're going to spend a lot of time, making sure that everything is nailed down. And, to some of the questions that your fans asked, that we've got the rattling that's out there, the connection points are good, the control elements are there, that, that everything is completely bundled up, and we've got a great board spin, and, that's our starting point. And then we'll build on top of that.
Hamit is going back a little bit to the retail question. and saying, yes, but retail gives me a chance to hear the thing before buying it. What about that? People like me would want to hear the system first before buying it. Now, I will say, first of all, that listening to an audio system in a retail environment has very little to do with what it's going to sound like in your home, right?
Absolutely. There are always challenges when it comes to, to audio. But the one thing that we found, especially, from all of the testing and all of the surveys that we put out there, is that unlike, even 5 years ago where you go into retail to do a lot of, or at least the millennials of the world, do a lot of their shopping, today it's about word of mouth. It's about recommendations. It's about, those people that have gotten their hands on it or heard about it, and, they see a functionality and capability that was never available to them before. This is one of those products. So we're seeing more and more, people that are saying, we'll buy it, but the assumption is that it's going to sound great. For us, our relationship with the purchasers is absolutely, it's killer. So if somebody's buying our product and they're not liking it, we're going to work with them to understand why are they not liking it, what can we do to enhance it, and how do we make this thing, the best possible product out there. It's all about customer satisfaction. So we're going to find a way to make everybody happy, or as many people as we can.
Speaking of the product itself, I didn't get a sense of how big it is. How big is this cube?
This first cube it's a 6-inch cube. The 6-inch,
not too big.
No, it's not too big. But in this world, as you know, size matters, right? So it really does. We spent a lot of time, looking at and working on smaller configurations. And from an introductory standpoint, we found that, with the drivers and the different types of drivers and the environments that we were working in, this was really the best size for us to start. And then we're not going to be stopping with the 6-inch or with the cube for that matter. There are a number of different sizes and shapes that we'll be introducing. And then, the interconnection relationship with them. So you'll have lots of options to be able to grow the size or shrink it down for that matter, all based upon what your preferences are.
UJ is asking, does it support power over Ethernet? Since you have an Ethernet port, or does it have a separate power connector, and that's what you use to power it?
There is a separate power.
Separate power, not yes. Power over Ethernet.
And it hasn't been mentioned, but if people are, I know we're launching the Indiegogo campaign next week, but if people are curious to see what's up there and available on the landing page that we've got, if they go to sonicblocks.com, you can get on the VIP list. I think Scott mentioned, or we talked about being able to offer your listeners sort of a pre-launch access to the Indiegogo campaign as a thank you to you for allowing us to share our idea on your show here as well. But sonicblocks.com is a place that you can go to get information before the Indiegogo page actually goes live.
And Scott, you did mention to me that offering my listeners a little bit of a special deal. Why don't you tell us about it?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. And we want to offer your listeners what we call a secret perk. Anybody that comes in and signs up, leaves their email and signs up for our pre-launch on sonicblocks.com between now and prior to our launch next week, will get a special reduced price that won't be available to anybody else, once the product launches.
And that price is?
That price is $179.
Okay, and what does that get you?
That gets you a brain, an exoskeleton, 3 drivers, your auxiliary cables, your power supply, a couple of plate covers, and it's a complete starter bundle for you to get to start your world of building Sonic blocks.
And then once the Indiegogo launch happens, what will people be expected to spend to support the project and get one when it's ready?
Well, the first 50 people will have the ability to get it at $199, and then the price will continue to go up from the $199 price point. So it'll be $199 for the first 50, then $229 for the next 50. And ultimately, you're looking at a $399 retail price point. So it's a pretty significant discount moving forward.
Significant, absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's so cool because it's a modular thing. You can start small, add to it as you go, improve its capabilities, change its capabilities entirely. Oh, look, there we can see the
success.
There you
success.
go.
We found the animated GIF online. Thank you to Josh, our engineer, for finding that. There you can sort of see the thing get put together. Oh, I also wanted to ask you about this. This, I guess, must be a nod to, I don't know quite what, but there are lights in these panels. To me,
Yes.
that would be very distracting, but maybe I'm not the generation that you're really marketing to.
Well, in this case, the beauty of these lights is that they're completely programmable. Right, so they're there both from an entertainment purpose, if you wish to have it, but they're also there as indicator lights, right? So you can, from your application, identify any individual panel that's on your blocks to be able to control it. You can see what your volume up or your volume down scenarios. You can see what your battery supply is, your battery levels. So they're intended to be both functional as well as entertaining. And we've designed them to continue to be able to offer up, different kinds of capabilities moving forward.
Yeah. Web 2147 is saying, would you ever consider going on Shark Tank?
We've actually been asked that question a few times, and listen, we would always consider something like that, but it was really important to Jordan and I to start with, and then of course with Mark and our great advisory team, that we spent a really sufficient amount of time understanding the product line, where we want to go with it, and really test it. And what we found is, for the most part, the investment community, they look at products like this, and they often say, it's a want, not a need. And, we said, look, not only are we building a great product, but we're also building a company that's giving back to society through our benefits corporation, with a percentage of our profits that are going towards charities like CASA that have, that are related to, or court-appointed special advocates related to kids that are stuck in the court system. They're in foster care due to abuse and neglect, and they've been removed from their homes. And typically, can you imagine Mr. Wonderful, hearing about, that kind of mission and going, well, what does that do for me, and how do I get my money back? Right? do I get paid before they do? So we decided to, really mitigate the risk, put up all the money for the development. We don't have any third-party, investors that are out there. And we said, all right, we're going to take this direct to consumers ourselves, get some great feedback, and really refine this thing moving forward. And then, should Mark or, anybody else from Shark Tank like to come in and invest at that point, we would love to talk to them.
Well, you mentioned something really important, and I'm really glad you did, because I wanted to make sure we talked about it a little bit, was this whole thing about supporting charities and giving back to the community. Another related aspect to that is that these speakers are going to be made entirely in the USA, which is awesome.
Jordan was really, adamant about, he said, look, you're coming back to the States. We're going to produce this in the States. We're going to put people back to work. So there's a lot of great manufacturers here. Let's see if we can find the right partners. And, that is our goal. The idea, of course, is, getting as much of this produced, in the U.S., all the assembly and the distribution as we possibly can. And, as part of our corporate DNA, not only do we want to produce it in the U.S., but we are supporting kids' charities. We have a percentage of our profits that are going to them. We're supporting women in technology. We really want to give a boost to hiring, great technical talent within our organizations that are out there. We're a startup New York company. We're certified by the governor of New York, Governor Cuomo. We work on campus at Binghamton University, and we work with great entrepreneurial, students that are there. And these types of things are really important for us to continue doing moving forward.
Mm-hmm. In fact, this addresses Beatmaster's question. Even millennials won't like to send it overseas when something needs repairs. They won't have to.
No, they won't. And the beauty also of being modular, the whole system doesn't need to come back, right?
Right.
If there's ever an issue, it's pop it on, we're swapping it out. We're putting together a great warranty and service program as well.
Now, Mark Webb 2147 is saying, so that package that we were talking about that you can buy into now, it was for one speaker. 2 speakers required for stereo?
You're talking about the starter pack?
Yeah.
The starter pack actually, Scott, has what, 3?
There's 3 drivers.
No, it's 3 drivers, but in one cubicle exoskeleton.
One cubicle can produce stereo.
Not with a tremendous amount of separation, but it can accept a stereo signal like most Bluetooth wireless speakers, single speakers can today. So it's not any different than that, right?
I think we actually do better than that. If you've got one small, jam box kind of thing, we actually give you discrete speaker, articulating speakers that could be, look, it's like a kitchen radio in stereo or a Bose unit in stereo as opposed to, being 8 feet or more between speakers. But it is an advantage until you can afford to get your buddy to come over and bring his or hers or to set up 2 in an environment. Right,
exactly. And then you could set up 2 and then have them work as a stereo pair as well.
Right.
In fact, here's another question for you, Mark. Hamid is asking, how is the system when it comes to channel separation and isolation?
Within the box itself, it's not. Again, we're not talking audiophile here. We're talking Bose wave radio kind of sentiment.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Before we end, I just want to ask Mark. I want to ask you real quick. Last time you were on, or 1 or 2 times ago, you were talking about the book you're writing, and this is a slightly off topic here, but I just wanted to get a sense, since I got you on the line, so to speak. How's your book and Blu-ray project coming along?
It's actually, thank you for asking. It is coming along. I get a couple of emails every day. The musicandAudioguide.com site is live and does sell, although people they go on there and they submit a pre-order for either the physical book and the physical Blu-ray, the electronic ebook version, and then they make their payment and they write me and say, I couldn't download it. Where is it? It's well, you have to read more carefully. It is a pre-order. It is all I've been doing for 6 months now. As of today, there are over 220 illustrations. Each one of those illustrations is being done by myself as well. Lots of musical notes and rhythms is what I've been working on earlier today. And excerpt from The Rite of Spring, showing polychords. It's one of those kinds of projects that's unfortunately leaked a little bit further than I had intended. People are being pretty patient, especially given I've had some health concerns over the last month or so. So it's coming. I have actually printed mock-up books to make sure that I knew what was going on with InDesign and the way the thing is being laid out. So we're making steady progress. My hope is that by early fall we'll be in the hands of proofreaders and indexing and have physical printed by shortly thereafter.
Good. Well, I fully support what you're doing because it's a really important project. Those of you who don't know about it, go back and find my interview with Mark on the subject of his book. We went into a lot of detail there, and it was really great, and I'm looking forward to it tremendously. One last technical question, Mark, for you. Some people in the chat room are sort of talking about crossovers. If you have several different drivers, right, that handle different frequency ranges, where are the crossovers? Is that in the individual DSPs for each driver or in the brain somewhere?
That's exactly right. The system itself in the Play-Fi DSP engines that drive each one allow us to, through digital, it's a Class D amplification system. That, coupled with the DSP, allows us to split up the frequencies appropriately for each of the drivers.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. Well, we've come to the end of a fascinating hour. It's a really interesting product and project, and I wish you both well with it and look forward to actually being able to hold one in my hand, listen to it, and try it out myself. Once again, sonicblocks.com is where you can go for a special deal for my listeners to get a starter kit once it's available. for the low, low price of $179, which is less than anybody will be able to get it for on the Indiegogo page when that launches next week. So, Scott Wilker, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
You bet. And Mark, once again, always great to have you on the show. I look forward to seeing you again.
We'll do it for sure. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. So be sure to go to sonicblocks.com to check that out for more information. You can always find me, of course, at avsforum.com. You can email me at scott@twit.tv, and you can follow me on Twitter at htgeekscott and at avsforum. You can always find previous episodes of Home Theater Geeks right here at twit.tv/htg and on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/twit Home Theater Geeks. You can also find us on iTunes and all sorts of various other places, so be sure to check it out. Next week, my guest geek is scheduled to be Jason Hartlove, the CEO of Nanosys, one of the companies involved in the quantum dot revolution. And so we're going to be talking about quantum dots in TVs next week, which should be absolutely fascinating. So I do hope you will join us. Until then, geek out.